"Where are my meds?" My voice was weak, almost breathless. The cold corridor of the Houston hospital felt tight around my chest. The smell of disinfectant burned my nose, and my vision blurred. I knew something was terribly wrong with me. I, Margaret Collins, have always been the mother who said yes, perhaps because, as a child, I learned that life had no patience for those who dared to say no. It was easier to swallow hard, take a deep breath, and accept. I said yes, even when my body screamed no. And so I gradually faded away, believing that being strong meant enduring without complaining. I spent much of my life in 2 downtown Houston diners, one in the morning, one at night. The smell of oil clung to my skin, the grease in my hair, and I'd come home with my feet throbbing so badly it felt like I'd walked miles on cobblestones. Often, my socks were stained with blood from standing so long, but all it took was seeing my son, Daniel, running toward me with that innocent smile, and I'd hide the pain behind an even bigger smile. "Are you tired, Mom?" he asked, still small, his eyes wide with worry. "No, my love, Mommy's fine," he replied, swallowing the truth along with the urge to collapse. Daniel grew up seeing my effort, but never my exhaustion. I made sure of that. I didn't want him to feel guilty for something he had no choice in the matter. There was a time when I dreamed of studying. I was even accepted into a technical program. I remember the letter arriving in a white envelope, my name written in blue letters. I trembled with excitement, as if it were a passport to a new life. But a few days later, Daniel came down with a high fever. There was no one to look after him, and I couldn't risk leaving him alone. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the back of a drawer. Another time, perhaps, I whispered to myself, but that another time never came. Years later, on a cold night, the electricity bill was due, and there was no money. I looked at my hands and saw my wedding ring. It was all I had left of value. I went to a small pawn shop, my eyes brimming with tears and my fingers sweating. The clerk took the piece of jewelry, examined it hurriedly, and said, "It's all I can offer." The price barely covered the basics, but I accepted. When I took the ring off my finger, I felt as if a piece of me had been ripped away. I returned home with the money, paid the bill, and turned off the light in Daniel's room, who slept peacefully. He never knew the price of that night. I still keep a symbol of my life, an old photo taken in Herman Park in Houston. Daniel must have been about 6 years old. We were sitting on the grass, he with a melting ice cream in his hand and I laughing, the wind messing up my hair. Whenever I feel weak, I look at this photo. It's my treasure, my reminder that everything I did, every yes I said, was for him. But it's also a cruel reminder. I didn't live for myself. I lived for others. And then came Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, young, beautiful, charismatic. At first, I thought she was a blessing for my son, always smiling, always sweet in public. She would say to me, "You're so generous, Margaret. You always think of everyone." I would smile back shyly, as if it were a compliment. But over time, I realized her eyes said something else. There was no sweetness there, just a look that pierced me, diminishing me. It was as if she were silently saying, "Not generous, weak." Rebecca noticed my sacrifices. She noticed that I never asked for anything for myself. She noticed that I accepted what was given to me, silently, without argument. And it was in this gap that she began to grow within our lives. The smile was the mask, the manipulation, the truth. That was me, the mother who always said yes, the woman who dropped out of school to care for her son, who sold her own wedding ring to pay the electricity bill, who kept a photo as the last piece of herself, the woman who believed that to love was to erase herself. I didn't know it yet, but all these sins built the road that would lead me to the abyss. 3 falls brought me here. Not all at once, but like waves that hit me without giving me time to breathe. Each one took away a piece of who I was, leaving me a prisoner within my own life. The first downfall was the diagnosis. I remember that day as if it were etched in stone. The office was small, the walls smelled of cheap disinfectant, and the ceiling fan made a constant, irritating hum. The doctor, his glasses sliding down his nose, leafed through my medical records with a silence that said it all. Finally, he looked up and spoke slowly, as if trying to soften a blow. "Margaret, you'll need these medications every day. For the rest of your life." I felt my body freeze. Every day? Forever? I thought. But what came out of my mouth was just a nod, almost automatic. I left the office with the prescription crumpled in my hand, as if carrying a sentence. From that moment on, there was no freedom. Each pill was an invisible chain, reminding me that my body was no longer my own. The second downfall came with retirement. After years in fast food restaurants, bussing tables and frying potatoes, I thought I'd finally have a break. But the break became a prison. My retirement check barely covered the basics. At the grocery store, I learned to do quick calculations with my eyes. Milk or rice, fruit or my medicine. Once, I stood in front of the shelf, holding a carton of milk. The cashier looked at me and asked, "Aren't you going to take it, ma'am?" I smiled as if it didn't hurt and said, "Next time." I put the milk back and, that night, I drank only water. Daniel didn't notice. I hid it as always. But each of these choices reminded me that I had no autonomy. My survival depended on the bare minimum. And the bare minimum, sometimes, didn't include me. The third setback was my son's wedding. When Daniel introduced Rebecca, I saw hope. She was young, beautiful, polite, and smiling. I thought, how wonderful. He's found someone to walk alongside. But I soon realized that not every smile is sincere. Rebecca had a sweet way of speaking, but her eyes always betrayed something more. One day, I offered to cook my son's favorite meal, as I had when he was a boy. Rebecca, without losing her smile, replied, "No need, Margaret. He has me now." It was a sharp cut, but I swallowed it silently. Another time, while we were discussing household bills, Rebecca chuckled and said, "You worry too much. Leave that to someone who understands." It was as if every sentence of hers held a hidden poison. Over time, I noticed the pattern. She would slowly isolate me, never raising her voice. A sidelong glance when I spoke. A hand gripping Daniel's tightly, as if to say, "She's my problem now." I kept quiet, because I'd always learned to keep quiet. But deep inside, I was beginning to feel the weight of control. These 3 falls followed one another like dominoes. The diagnosis kept me on medication. Retirement kept me on money that was never enough. And Daniel's marriage kept me on a woman who smiled on the outside but crushed me on the inside. Before I knew it, I had no choice. My life depended on pills I couldn't afford to lose, money that was never enough, and the goodwill of a daughter-in-law who turned every day into a silent ordeal. That morning, the house felt too clean, too quiet, as if someone had swept away not only the dust, but also any trace of doubt. The kitchen clock read 7:12. The smell of freshly brewed coffee wafted faintly, mingling with Rebecca's sweet perfume, a hint of vanilla that made me think of cold storefronts. Houston light slanted through the blinds, drawing streaks on the floor. I opened the cabinet above the sink with the same gesture I did every day. My hand went straight to the weekly pill box, Monday through Sunday, colorful caps. I touched the WED, one out of habit, even though it was Thursday. Light, so light it felt hollow. I pressed harder. The plastic creaked. I opened it. Empty. Time made a dry sound inside me. I had separated the doses the night before, one by one, counting the pills like one would count breaths. I remembered the tick of each cap. I remembered placing the box next to the salt shaker so I wouldn't forget it in the morning. Now, just the bare rectangle of plastic, as if my memory had been erased with a sponge. "Rebecca?" I called, without raising my voice. She appeared in the doorway as if she'd been waiting. She held a white mug in her hands, her hair tied in a neat bun, her light blouse wrinkle-free. Her smile was small, perfectly polite. "Yes, Margaret?" I held up the little box. She glanced briefly at it, then back at me. A microsecond in which her eyes didn't smile. "It's empty." "Ah." She tilted her head, a rehearsed gesture. "It's just routine, Mom. You must have forgotten to refill it." Mom. The way the word came out of her mouth held no warmth. It sounded like a technical term, like a stamp on a file. I broke up last night. Are you sure? The smile didn't change. The eyes, yes, these things happen. You're tired. She took 2 steps forward, past me, opened the silverware drawer, clattering metal. The next one, overfolded napkins. Then the door under the sink. She moved things just for the sake of moving them, taking them out and putting them back with the efficiency of someone rearranging a display case. Without really looking, she just took up space and time. See? Nothing here. He closed the last door with the softness of someone ending a scene. Do you want me to stop by the pharmacy later? The air felt colder. I tried to remember every gesture from the night before. My hand on the blister, the sound of the pills falling into the box, the lid on the coffee filter, the window closing. I remembered the final click, the way I'd aligned the box parallel to the salt shaker. I knew. But the way Rebecca looked at me made me doubt my own mind, as if the whole house were conspiring to make me believe her story. Maybe I put it somewhere else. I heard my small, borrowed voice. It happens. And the smile widened a millimeter, sincere only on the surface. It's just routine, Mom. She set the mug down on the counter, and that's when I saw it. A perfect, round, spill-free mark right where the carton used to be, as if something had been removed and replaced by the elegant gesture of setting down a coffee. A period. Rebecca grabbed a cloth and Ma, without rushing, wiped the circle. The foam from the product rose, smelling of artificial citrus, a cloth to erase a trail. Daniel leaves early today, he commented casually, already turning around. No need to worry him about details. Details. My health fit into details. Did you go through my things yesterday? I ventured quietly. Of course not. An answer too quick. A traffic sign. I just organize what's out of place. She turned and walked into the living room. I heard the small sound of her fingernails tapping lightly on her phone. Tap, tap, tap. Like someone keeping time to a song only she could hear. With each step, the vanilla scent came and went, like a curtain opening and closing. I was left alone with the empty box in the center of the counter. The clock read 7:19. I opened the food cabinet, the cookie jar, the towel basket. I checked the lower shelves, even though I knew my knees didn't like such movements. Nothing, just the feeling of being watched by walls that held secrets. In the sink's trash, a glint caught my eye, crumpled aluminum foil. I reached out, but drew back, the automatic gesture of someone embarrassed, even to rummage through their own trash. I breathed. I carefully pulled the paper out. It was just a butter wrapper. My heart, which had leaped into my throat, slowly returned. Margaret, Rebecca's voice came from the living room, sweet. Would you like toast? No, I replied, more harshly than I intended. To break the unease, I opened the refrigerator. The cold hit me in the face. I looked again at the streaks of light on the floor. Longer now. The silence in the house wasn't silence. It was curated. Every sound seemed chosen. The clock, the ping of the filter, the distant notification on Rebecca's phone. Everything was arranged to make me doubt my memory. I put the little box in my apron pocket like someone guarding a wounded body. I grabbed my purse and pretended to look for my wallet, stalling for time. Rebecca reappeared, leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, a knowing smile. Do you need anything? Just some air. Sure. Her pause was millimeter. It's good to clear your head. She wasn't asking if I was okay. She was telling me that my head was the problem. I touched the photo of Daniel and me on the fridge, held by a star-shaped magnet, his laughter, the grass of Herman Park, the melting ice cream. Memories carry weight, and sometimes they sustain. I'm going out for a quick run. Want me to drive you? He offered, with catalog politeness. No, I know the way. The hallway to the door seemed longer. I picked up my keys, and the metal made a sharp sound that cut through the air. Before I could turn the handle, I heard the words coming over my shoulder, soft as velvet, cold as a blade. It's just routine, Mom. I stood still for a second, absorbing the weight of those 3 words. Routine. An overly organized house, an empty little box, a smile that didn't reach my eyes, and the feeling that something inside me was being folded, sorted, and put away in a drawer that wasn't mine. I opened the door. The air outside smelled of old rain and gasoline. I carefully descended the first step. My chest tightened. Not from lack of air, but from understanding. I still had no proof. I still had no strength, but there was a scratch on the glass, a thin, almost invisible line, showing where the mask was starting to come loose. From that day on, the nights became longer. I'd lie down and feel my heart pounding in my neck. The room breathed with me, shallow and hurried. The lampshade made a yellow circle on the wall, and inside it I'd count the intervals between one pang and the next. His hands tingled. His legs felt heavy. The air seemed thinner. On the nightstand, the empty box, I knew something was wrong. I knew my body was crying out for help. But in that house, even the silence seemed to have an owner. Rebecca walked through the door without knocking. Awake? I nodded. I didn't want to talk. I wanted air. She approached with soft steps. She smelled of vanilla and expensive cream. The glow of her phone illuminated her face from below, like an inverted bonfire. Daniel worked late. I know, he's exhausted. The message was given before the sentence ended. I turned my face to the window. The Houston night seemed like a dark blue sheet. A neighbor's car drove by slowly, a headlight streaking across my wall. My heart pounded in my throat. Rebecca, have you seen my medicine? A small smile. Relaxed shoulders. A gaze that doesn't change. You've been distracted, Margaret. I set it aside. I remember. My memory fails me, he said, as if telling the time. It's normal. I swallowed hard. The taste was of rust. She sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress gave way beside me. The proximity chilled me. Rebecca leaned in and spoke close to my ear, low, precise, each word measured by my breath. Don't tell your son anything. He has enough problems already. The four walls narrowed. I felt goosebumps rise up my arm and onto the back of my neck. My hands reached for the sheet and clutched it, as if there were something firm there to hold on to. Rebecca, I need them. I know. Silence. Then why? Because Daniel can't handle this right now. He cut in softly. Are you going to make him sick too? Her words pushed me to the edge of the bed. I was already there. I don't want to worry him. Good. She smiled, her eyes still. We're the same in that regard. We both want the best for him. The urge to scream hit his chest and came back. It didn't go away. My body responded before I did. A tightness in my sternum, a brief dizziness. I put my hand to my ribs, trying to find the exact spot of pain, as if pressing there would put something back in place. I'll figure it out tomorrow, he whispered. Rest. Rebecca stood up. The light from her cell phone disappeared. The perfume remained. I thought of Daniel, of the boy who ran through Herman Park with ice cream in his hand, of the man who believed I was indestructible. Don't tell your son anything. The phrase took root. I turned to the side. The lamp shaded my fingers. The clock flashed 2:08. I closed my eyes and counted my own heartbeats, trying to control the rhythm. 1, 2, 3. The air came in shallow. It came out short. I thought of my granddaughter, her fine hair, her warm cheeks when she falls asleep in my lap. I thought of Rebecca saying, he's got enough problems already, and understanding, if you tell me, I'll take away everyone's peace. Blackmail doesn't need shouting, just timing. I got up to get a drink of water. The hallway was dark. The tile floor bit into my feet. In the kitchen, the clock ticked louder, almost cruelly. I opened the refrigerator, and the white light hit me like a beacon. The bottle trembled in my hand. The glass hit the marble with a dull thud. The chest responded with another twinge. I walked back slowly, counting steps. 34 to the bedroom. I stopped at the door. Rebecca stood in the hallway, as if she'd emerged from the wall. Her arms crossed. Her face was neutral. Is everything okay? Water. Daniel has an early meeting. She glanced at his closed bedroom door. It would be terrible if he woke up worried. The words had no point, but they cut. I know. Then rest. She passed me with the precision of someone who doesn't touch. The vanilla flavor lingered in the air. I felt anger and shame at the same time. 2 embers fighting to see which burned brighter. I lay down again. The sheet felt heavy. I rolled over. The window now showed the shadow of a palm tree on the wall. I could hear my blood pounding in my ears. I thought about getting up and going into Daniel's room, turning on the light, and saying everything. "Son, listen to me. Look at me." But Rebecca's words screamed inside. "He has enough problems already." And behind her, another. "If you tell him, I'll make him choose." My throat tightened. A message arrived on my cell phone, a dry vibration on the wood of the nightstand. I picked up the phone. An unknown number. "Confirm cancellation of your monthly renewal." A link, the kind of message I'd never received before. My stomach lurched. Rebecca, on the other side of the wall, walked back into the room, her steps light. I saw the pieces touching. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to write to Daniel. "Son, I need you." I deleted it. I wrote again. I deleted it. My heart raced, and my entire body responded with a wave of heat that rose from my chest and burst through my temples. I was at my limit. I turned to the photo on the headboard, Daniel and I in the park. My hand touched the glass. I whispered, "Hold on." The word came out so low, it sounded like a thought. Rebecca appeared again. I don't know how much time passed. The clock flashed 3:21. "Do you need anything?" Soft voice, report tone. "No." "Great." She leaned over, as if she were going to arrange my pillow, and spoke so close that I felt the air of the sentence on my skin. "Don't ruin Daniel's day." When she left, I cried soundlessly. I cried with anger, with fear, with helplessness. I pointed my face at the wall and let the tear run down to the pillow. The salt burned my mouth. The pain in my chest marked its territory. My whole body understood the message. I was in her hands. I took a short breath, 3 times, and, at the bottom of that well, an idea sparked, small, stubborn, like a match on a windy night. I thought, if I can't speak loudly, I'll write softly. The last drop fell there. Night fell, vanilla scent in the air, empty box, cancellation message, and the sentence that became a wall, "Don't tell your son anything." I closed my eyes, and I promised myself that, come dawn, something would change, even if it was just a word, even if it was just a note. I would get out of bed, I would go to the pharmacy, I would find someone who would see me as a person. I woke before the sun. The house was still silent, and the bluish morning light timidly filtered through the crack in the curtains. My heart was heavy in my chest, as if each beat reminded me of the empty pill box in the nightstand drawer. I sat up slowly on the edge of the bed, trying not to make a sound. The floorboards creaked, an accomplice to the house's secrets. When I opened the door, I found Daniel in the hallway, already dressed for work. His tie was ill-fitting, his black briefcase in hand. He smiled when he saw me, unsuspecting. "Mom, you woke up early. It's the custom." I forced a smile. He watched me for a moment, his eyes tired but full of affection. He wanted to ask if I was okay. I knew. A son always knows, but I didn't leave him any space. "Everything will be fine today, son. Work in peace." I touched his shoulder, as if pushing away the worry. Daniel nodded, straightened his tie, and kissed me on the forehead. He hurried out, unaware that his mother was silently breaking down. I waited to hear the garage door slam. The car's roar faded into the street. Then I took a deep breath. The air came in short gasps, but enough to move me. I glanced into the kitchen. Rebecca was still asleep, or pretending to be. It didn't matter. The hallway to the exit felt like a minefield. I grabbed my already packed bag, with documents and a crumpled piece of paper inside. The note. I tiptoed. The cold floor chilled my steps. I touched the doorknob slowly, each metallic click like a siren. My heart raced, louder than the birds outside. I turned and opened the door. The Houston air enveloped me, heavy with morning humidity and smelling of freshly cut grass. I closed the door behind me. The click was both a relief and a fear. I walked to the pharmacy 2 blocks away. Each step was a struggle against my weak body, against the fear of being caught, against Rebecca's voice echoing, "Don't tell your son." When I arrived, the automatic door opened with a cold gust. The white glow blinded me for seconds, and there was the counter. Behind him, Dr. James Miller, the pharmacist, who always served me patiently, unshaven, glasses sliding down his nose, a framed photo of 2 smiling children playing baseball next to the computer. Details that reminded me he was also a father. My hands were shaking as I handed over the prescription. The hidden paper was folded among the documents, written in crooked, simple, desperate letters. "Help me." He picked it up, read it, and looked up at me. He didn't say anything, but in that look I found what I no longer had at home, someone who saw me. And in that instant, I breathed. It was then that Dr. James Miller stepped out from behind the counter. He held my papers, but he didn't have that mechanical air of someone just going through the motions. He looked around, assessed if anyone was nearby, and gave me a discreet nod. "Mrs. Collins, could you come with me for a moment?" I walked through the small side door that led to the staff corridor. The smell changed, less perfume, more alcohol, more dust from stacked boxes. There, the world seemed suspended, as if I'd crossed an invisible border. He lowered his voice, almost to a whisper. "I need to be direct. Your prescriptions have been canceled." My body tightened. "How? Canceled?" My voice came out scratchy. "I never asked for that." He held the paper tightly. "Exactly. It wasn't you." A chill crept up my spine. My head felt heavy. The pieces, once loose, began to fit together with painful force. The empty boxes, Rebecca's smile, the repeated phrase, "It's just routine, Mom." "Someone accessed the system and requested cancellation in your name," he added. I felt the ground disappear. My God. He looked at me with firm but compassionate eyes that knew the weight of it. "Do you trust anyone who might have done this?" The words stuck in my throat, but I didn't need to say them. Her face appeared in my mind alone. The cold smile, the calculated gestures. "Rebecca," I whispered. Then, everything made sense. It wasn't forgetfulness. It wasn't distraction. It wasn't my memory failing. It was a plan, a silent, calculated, repeated abuse. And it had a name. My heart raced. My breath became shallow, but at the same time, there was a new clarity. As if I'd lived in a fog for years, and suddenly a ray of light broke through. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't confused. I was being controlled. Dr. Miller reached into his pocket, took out a card, and slid it toward me. "If you need help, come to me. Don't let this pass you by." I held the card like someone holding a piece of solid ground. In that instant, something changed. It wasn't about missing pills anymore. It was about me. About my life being ripped away, pill by pill. And for the first time, I thought, I'm not going to allow it. It was the beginning of a turning point. The moment I stopped being just the mom who said yes and began to recognize myself as someone who had the right to say enough. Houston S. Central Library, immersed in old novels I hadn't read in decades. The smell of worn paper and silence gave me the strength to remember who I had been before I turned into a shadow. When I closed the book, the sun was already sinking between the buildings, and I decided I wasn't going to be silent anymore. When I got home, it was already night. The living room was lit, and Daniel S.'s voice echoed with distress. He paced back and forth, his tie loosened, his cell phone still in his hand. Rebecca sat calmly on the sofa, a cup of tea in her hand. She looked the picture of a worried wife. As soon as he saw me, Daniel ran to me. "Mom, where were you? I've been calling all day. I thought something had happened." "I was in the library," he said firmly. "I needed some time." He sighed, but didn't calm down. He looked at Rebecca, then at me. "You can't just leave without warning. Do you know how nervous you make me?" Rebecca lowered her eyes and shook her head, as if confirming her husband's plight. Then she stood up with gentle gestures. "I said your mother is confused, Daniel. It's normal at her age. She forgets things." It was like the ground cracked beneath me. I looked straight at her and felt a courage I no longer recognized within myself. "Confused?" I asked, my voice firm. You stole my life. One pill at a time. The silence fell heavily. Rebecca paled, but didn't lose her smile. Daniel frowned, clearly confused. What are you talking about, Mom? She canceled my prescriptions. I went to the pharmacy. The pharmacist confirmed it. Rebecca opened her mouth before him. That's absurd. Daniel, can you believe it? I would never do something so cruel. She approached him, touching his arm theatrically. Your mother is stressed. She forgets where she puts things. It's happened before. Daniel ran his hand through his hair, uneasily. Mom, maybe you made a mistake. These pharmacy systems are complicated. There could have been an error. His words were like blades. The son I'd raised so painstakingly, whom I'd protected at every turn, now doubted me. Not out of malice, but because Rebecca's manipulation was flawless. She seemed like the dutiful wife, and I, just a tired old lady. Daniel, I said, my voice cracking. I know what I saw. I know what I felt. This wasn't a mistake. It was abuse. Rebecca leaned her head on his shoulder, feigning fragility. She's accusing me without proof. Are you going to allow that? He looked at me, torn. His eyes were the same as the boys from the park, but now filled with uncertainty. Mom, give me time to understand. I just can't believe my wife would do something like that. My heart broke, but I didn't back down. It's okay, son. You need your time, but I won't shut up. Not anymore. The atmosphere was charged. Mrs. Jenkins, the gossipy neighbor who had come to bring a dish, watched silently from the corner of the room. Officer Green, the condominium security guard, was still at the door taking routine notes and heard every word. Rebecca noticed. For the first time, her eyes hardened, the mask showing a crack. See? She makes up stories, Daniel. It'll be the talk of the whole building. But it was too late. There were witnesses. Her whisper would no longer be confined to the walls of the house. Rebecca stepped back and smiled at Daniel again, but this time it was forced. He, still in shock, just sat on the couch, rubbing his temple. I need to think, he murmured. The silence in the room still weighed heavily after my scream. Daniel sat with his hands in his hair, and I felt every word I said become a wall between us. Rebecca, standing beside me, looked like an actress on stage. Suddenly, her tone changed. The tears came quickly, her voice trembling, but loud enough for everyone there, Daniel, Mrs. Jenkins, the neighbor bringing a plate, and Officer Green, the security guard still taking notes, to hear every syllable. You don't understand. I just wanted to help. Margaret gets lost in her own memories, forgets her doses, and I was afraid something worse would happen. I'm not a villain. I'm a concerned wife and daughter-in-law. Rebecca turned to Daniel, grabbed his hands, and cried theatrically into his chest. I never meant to hurt anyone. If I canceled something, it was because I thought I was protecting your mother. I don't deserve to be humiliated like this. In front of the neighbors. Daniel's face tightened. He looked at me, then at her, then at the floor. I saw the confusion in his eyes, the weight of not knowing who to believe. Mom, maybe Rebecca did the wrong thing. But what if she really believed she was helping? He asked, almost asking for an easy way out. Rebecca lifted her tear-streaked face. The brief smile that escaped me was a dagger hidden behind the veil of tears. She was turning the tables right there, in front of everyone. I was just trying to be a good daughter-in-law, she said, sobbing. But if you prefer to paint me as a monster, so be it. Mrs. Jenkins shifted in the corner, whispering to the security guard. I've never seen crying so well rehearsed. Officer Green took notes silently, but his presence was a reminder. There were witnesses to this scene. I looked at Daniel. Son, this isn't about mistakes. It's about control. This didn't happen once. It's happened many times, and you know I'm not making it up. He sighed, running his hand over his face. I don't know what to think. Rebecca clung to him again, her voice low but clear. Don't let her destroy what we have. Love. The poison was given. There, in front of everyone, I realized Rebecca wouldn't walk away defeated. She would fight to turn everything around, to make me look fragile, crazy, ungrateful. And that was the acid test, to maintain my truth, even when even my son wavered before her theatrics. I took a deep breath, and for the first time, I didn't give in to tears. You can cry, Rebecca. You can play the saint, but I know what you did. And now everyone knows something's wrong. Rebecca froze for a moment. Her gaze burned. And even though Daniel was still confused, her mask was no longer perfect. Rebecca was still sobbing in the living room, kneeling before Daniel, her hands clasped in his as if she were a victim, not a tormentor. The house lights cast long shadows, and I could feel her performance gaining momentum. Daniel shook his head, torn, his eyes brimming with tears, partly wanting to believe his wife, partly remembering the mother who had never lied to him. Then something shattered the scene. Rebecca's phone, resting on the coffee table, vibrated insistently. The screen lit up, illuminating the room with a notification too brief for her to reach before Daniel. Instinctively, he grabbed the device. "Daniel," she exclaimed, her voice almost cracking. "It's personal. Don't touch that." But it was too late. His eyes scanned the screen, his fingers swiping quickly. The silence grew thick, until Daniel paled. "What is this?" he asked, without raising his head. Rebecca jumped up, trying to snatch the phone from his hands. "Give it to me, now! You don't understand. I was just taking care of things." I walked over, my heart racing. "What's this about, Daniel?" He took a deep breath, still reading, and then looked up at me. His eyes held something I'd never seen before. Disbelief and fury combined. "She's been exchanging emails with a lawyer. It says, once I have control of her medical bills and retirement, I can ensure stability for us." His words fell like hammer blows. Rebecca recoiled, her face aching with rehearsed tears. "Daniel, it's not what it looks like. I just wanted to organize. Your mother can't handle it. I was trying to protect all of us." Daniel got up from the couch, his phone still in his hand. "Protect? Take control of her retirement, cancel her prescriptions. Is that protection?" My chest tightened. It was more than the pills. It was my entire life being ripped away behind smiles. Suspense, fear, and anger twisted into a knot. I saw clearly, if she had her way, I would no longer have my own identity. I would own nothing. Rebecca looked at me as if seeking complicity, but the drama had lost its force. Still, she didn't give up. "Margaret, tell him. You know you can't handle so many responsibilities anymore." "I just wanted to lighten the load. I'd do anything for you." I stared at her, firmly. "Anything but letting me live in peace. Isn't that right, Rebecca?" She bit her lip, and for a second, the silence was too heavy. Mrs. Jenkins coughed lightly in the corner, embarrassed but attentive. Officer Green, still holding his notebook, cleared his throat, as if knowing this might become an incident. Daniel rubbed his temples. The conflict within him was palpable. "I don't know what to believe, but those emails are here. I can't ignore them." Rebecca tried to approach him again, but he backed away. "No, stay there." Fear took over my body, but with it a flame was born. If even my son was still confused, it was time for me to act quickly, to protect what little was still mine. I thought about retirement, the papers I'd signed with confidence, the passwords hidden in drawers around the house. Rebecca knew everything. If she hadn't been arrested, she would have taken every shred of my freedom. I took a deep breath. "Daniel, we need to register this. Now, before it's too late." He looked at me, still torn, but this time he nodded slowly. Maybe it's the only way out." Rebecca shouted theatrically. "You're going to destroy me because of a misunderstanding. I'm his wife." I firmly replied, "And I am the mother. And I will not let you erase me." The room seemed too small for so much weight, but for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just reacting. I was starting to fight back. The decision to call the police wasn't easy, but it was inevitable. After that night, Daniel discovered the emails on Rebecca's phone. There was no more pretending. Officer Green, still in the room, heard everything. He picked up his radio and said firmly, "We need to file a report. This could constitute fraud, an attempted misappropriation." Rebecca lost control of her mask. She screamed, cried, and hit her leg, as if she were the one wronged in the story. Daniel, still confused, looked at her with the eyes of a man who saw two versions of reality before him. But when we signed the police report, I realized that the truth finally had a path to follow. The next few days were a whirlwind. I was called to testify, taking with me the messages I'd received, Dr. Miller's card, and the empty box I'd been keeping as evidence. Rebecca hired an expensive lawyer, and with each call from the police, my body shook. But deep down, I knew this would be the last act. The day of the hearing arrived. The Houston courtroom felt like a wall. The gray carpet, the rows of wooden benches, the coat of arms of justice above the judge's seat. I walked in with my head held high, though my hands trembled. Daniel walked beside me, his eyes downcast, still trying to understand how it all happened. Rebecca stood at the front, impeccably dressed as if she were the most trusted woman in Texas. Behind her, the lawyer shuffled through papers with practiced confidence. When the judge entered, a heavy silence fell. He opened the case file and said, "We're here to analyze charges of prescription fraud, attempted retirement embezzlement, and document manipulation." My heart raced. Rebecca sighed loudly, feigning indignation. The first witness called was Dr. James Miller. He walked up to the podium with a firm step, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Then he said, "I've been treating Mrs. Collins for years. There were never any problems, until suddenly, I received a request to cancel prescriptions in her name. The system showed a digital signature coming from another IP address. When Mrs. Collins came to me, she brought a note asking for help. From my experience, I knew immediately that something was wrong." Rebecca's lawyer tried to interrupt. "Are you sure she wasn't just confused?" Dr. Miller replied without hesitation. "I do. I have digital records with date, time, and protocol number. And here is the report that proves the request did not come from her." The judge received the sheets of paper and read them silently. The sound of the paper being turned echoed like a hammer in my chest. Then, the messages I'd received on my phone appeared. Veiled threats, emotional blackmail. The projected screen displayed the phrases, "Think of your granddaughter. Don't make Daniel suffer." Rebecca lowered her eyes, but I saw her hands grip her knees until they turned white. Then, the decisive moment. The emails from her cell phone. The digital expert confirmed they were sent from her account. The content was clear. Plans to take control of my medical bills and my retirement. Daniel brought his hands to his face. The tears fell silently. For the first time since the beginning, he looked at me without doubt. It was as if to say, "Mom, forgive me for not believing." Rebecca tried to get up, shouted, "This is a misunderstanding. I just wanted to take care of it." The judge raised his hand, imposing silence. "The documents and testimony are clear. There was intent to defraud, manipulate, and attempt to embezzle." My body shivered. I'd been waiting for this moment, but hearing it out loud was like walking through a portal. The judge banged his gavel. "I order the immediate removal of Rebecca Collins from the administration of any assets or medical matters of Mrs. Margaret Collins. I recommend the opening of criminal charges for fraud. Furthermore, Mrs. Collins will have her prescriptions reinstated and follow-up guaranteed." Rebecca slumped in her chair. Her lawyer collected the papers, grimly, without a word. Daniel stood up, crossed the room, and took my hands. His teary eyes met mine. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you from the start." I caressed her face and replied calmly, "The important thing is that now you know." We left the courthouse together. The Houston sun shone brightly on the sidewalk, warming my face. People passed by indifferently, but inside I felt a quiet euphoria, a triumph that needed no applause. Rebecca lost. I recovered not only my income, not only my retirement. I recovered the dignity I thought I'd buried among my resignations, and as I took a deep breath, I realized life was finally mine again. Today I rise with the sun pretending it doesn't know about the nights I've lived. I open the window, and the Houston air fills me with life, smelling of wet grass and something I've never felt so clearly. Belonging. In the backyard, the garden I planted in the weeks following the courthouse bursts with color. The petunias have thrived in their red pot, the basil perfumes the path, and a small rose bush, still tender, already shows 2 buds promising flowers. Watering them every morning has become my new ritual. The small drops on my palm remind me that I'm taking care of myself now. I keep my medications in a new, simple, lavender print box, bought at a store. It's not just a new object. It's a symbol. Before, that box was a place of fear. Now, it's a place of responsibility. I calmly arrange them, check the doses, and write the dates in a small notebook I keep nearby. The notebook has a worn cover and a blue pen I use to jot down appointments, names, and also small victories. I went to the market alone. I planted the rosebush. I talked to Daniel without crying. Each line is a brick rebuilding my life. I changed the door lock, alone, with Daniel's help, now determined, now my haven. And I took pleasure in that simple task, turning the key, hearing the click, knowing that each knock on the wood is one less barrier between me and freedom. I burned, in a small ceremony in the backyard, a sheaf of old papers, anonymous notes, drafts of empty messages, the copy of the email that nearly took everything from me. The flames were small, controlled, the smell of burning paper rose, and with it came a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I also threw in a napkin with the word fear written on it, and as it turned to ash, I felt the word lose its shape within me. Daniel has been by my side in a new way, hesitantly at first, then firmly. We had lunch on Sunday, and for the first time since he got married, we talked without secrets. We talked about those nights, the phone calls, what went wrong between us. He took my hand slowly and said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have seen it sooner." I told him I understand, that forgiveness is a two-way street, and that I prefer to look forward. There are still scars, but scars are also maps. They show where the pain passed and what remains. Rebecca left our lives. The court handed down its sentence, and the condominium changed protocols. I didn't celebrate with shouts or wine. I celebrated by watering the basil, pulling out a weed, and watching the root come out whole. Triumph, for me, came silently, in small gestures that marked the reclaiming of my body, taking a leisurely shower, choosing what to wear, accepting an invitation to a book club at the library where I rediscovered part of myself. I took a short trip with Daniel, no Hungary or distant cities this time, just a weekend in Galveston. We walked along the shore, felt the cold water lap at my ankles, and laughed without needing to explain. We walked to the lighthouse, where I sat and let the wind sweep the anguish from my throat. I came back with seashells in my bag and a photo of us, unfiltered, with the sun smiling behind. I also brought a promise. Short outings, simple plans, independence. Sometimes memory plays tricks on me. I see a shadow that reminds me of the living room in my old house, or I hear a notification, and my heart sinks. But I have tools. Dr. Miller still runs checks. The bank blocked access. Daniel changed passwords, and I now know the names of people who help me. I lived for so long thinking that asking for help was weakness. Today I know that asking is courage, and accepting help is an act of self-love. What surprises me most is what came after the victory. Peace. Not an empty peace, but one with texture. The smell of coffee on any given morning. The sound of basil leaves rustling as I cut a leaf for lunch. The feeling of having a voice in the decisions about my own life. At night, when I close my eyes, I don't count fears. I count plans. A new chair on the balcony. The ceramics course I always talked about but never took. A dinner with friends I haven't seen in a long time. And when I look in the mirror, I see someone else again. No longer the woman who erased herself for love of another. I see the Margaret who still loves old romances, who loves handfuls of dirt and laughter on the beach. And I say to myself, loudly, firmly, looking straight into the eyes that now belong only to me. Now, no one else decides whether I live or not, only me.